I'm Kay Laporte, and this is my summary project for legal issues in the workplace. The first law I touched on was the workers' compensation law. This law is extremely important because when these things happen, they need to be able to support their families. When they get hurt, they need to be compensated for when they have a work injury when they're not able to work. Something I found interesting about this is that once you sign the papers and you take the workman's comp, no matter the issue, once you've signed, you cannot sue your employer for the injury anymore because you signed and you decided to take the benefits instead. An example of this is a worker has been working like construction or something and he gets something dropped on his hand and it gets broken. He has the choice then because he can take the workman's comp benefits, or if he feels like they're liable, he could have a lawsuit, depending on whatever the situation really is. The next law I touched on was the firing laws. This is very important because you can only fire employees who break company rules that they've signed on and that is established in the workplace. You cannot fire people for unjust reasons, as in like character, their race, religion, etc. Something I found pretty interesting is that once an employee then signs on to the company rules and they're employed at the company, if any rules are broken, they can be terminated immediately because that would be the cause that they signed on then. Another example would be an employee is saying inappropriate things at work, and several complaints have been coming in, and there's proof, and the company decides to terminate and escort the employee out because company rules were then broken, and he signed on those and broke the rules. The next law I touched on was the wage laws. This is very important because an employee must be paid what is required by the state, which in Wisconsin it is $7.25 an hour. It is important because to establish a point where everyone needs to get paid, no one can underpay that because that would result in a lawsuit. And now that we have something established, everyone needs to be doing that. A unique fact that I found out about this is that servers get paid minimum $2.13 an hour plus their tips. But if the tips do not add up to the minimum wage of $7.25 an hour for the hours that they've worked, they need to get paid the difference of what they're missing out of that for the minimum wage. An example of this then would be like if a server works 8 hours in a day, and at the end of the night she has her tips and the hourly wage of the $2.13 an hour, it adds up to about $50 because it was slow. But because the minimum wage laws of the 725 and the 8 hours she worked comes out to $58, she needs the $8 difference because she didn't hit the minimum wage there. The next law I touched on was harassment laws. I thought it was very important to touch on this because it's important that our workers are safe and comfortable in an environment where they go to work every single day and they won't be harassed. Something interesting that I found is that any comment, action that violates a harassment law, no matter how small you may think it may be, if it violates those rules and they take offense and they go with it, if they take offense to it, then that can immediately result in a lawsuit if you're breaking those harassment laws. An example of that would be like if an employee is doing her work and her boss comes up and makes sexually suggestive comments to her. She feels offended and decides to file a lawsuit because her harassment laws were broken and he overstepped. And if she decides to file a lawsuit, that is totally legal and he can have lost then. The next law that I decided to touch on in the last one was the technology and privacy laws. I felt like this was very important because if you're not in the know of it, you can easily make mistakes. And that is that your personal devices need to be used for personal things and your personal accounts. Anything that you want to be kept private under your personal stuff is going to be protected under the employee privacy laws. That no one can monitor your data that is in your private accounts and phones and whatnot. What I found unique about this is that any company device, email, company calls on a company phone can all be monitored and is legal by the company. Because when you sign on and you do your onboarding, you will sign on to the data privacy and that they can monitor your work devices and whatnot. An example of this would be an employee makes personal messages on a company work phone. The company monitors this and has a conversation with her because they saw it about using the phone for personal use at work. And this is completely legal because she was using a company device to make these text messages, and they are allowed to monitor that based on the privacy laws of the US. And that would be everything. Thank you for listening.